People ask me about Hillsong Church, and I'm like, I can't do it, man. I hate to break it to you. It's really not that special.
Hillsong Church, the international religious group, was once best known for its celebrity attendees.
What happens when a global church becomes a brand more than a body of believers? Hillsong once stood as a beacon of modern worship, filling stadiums with songs heard around the world. But beneath the spotlight, cracks were growing. A dazzling empire built on image and marketing began to collapse under scandals and broken trust. Is this just a cautionary tale about one church, or a mirror reflecting a dangerous trend across modern Christianity? When faith turns into fame and worship becomes performance, what is lost in the process, and can it be restored? The core problem unveiled. Hillsong's story is not just about scandalous headlines or failed leadership. It reveals a growing issue where the line between church and brand becomes dangerously blurred. What began as a humble community centered on faith gradually morphed into a global phenomenon built on image, production, and celebrity culture. This shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow erosion of foundational values as marketing and influence took precedence over accountability and spiritual depth. At the heart of the problem was a desire to be relevant, to capture culture's attention, and to grow bigger and faster than ever before. Hillsong's signature style, slick concerts, compelling messages, and viral worship songs created a powerful appeal. Yet behind this polished surface, the pressure to maintain an impeccable image often overshadowed the call to genuine repentance and transparency. The very gospel Hillsong sought to share risked being drowned out by the glitter and glamour. This focus on spectacle put pastors into a new light. They were no longer just spiritual shepherds, they became celebrities, brands themselves. Charisma and social media presence increasingly mattered more than humble leadership or loving accountability. But what happens when the people meant to lead with integrity are caught up in the culture of celebrity? When the message is shaped to protect personalities instead of confessing failures, the foundation cracks deeply. Not all was visible to the congregation. Behind closed doors, concerns about spiritual abuse, unchecked power, and financial secrecy simmered. The culture encouraged loyalty to the brand and discouraged questioning. Members who raised doubts often felt silenced or sidelined, creating an environment where problems grew in the shadows. This atmosphere made it difficult for the movement to hold itself accountable, even as the cracks widened. The disconnect between appearance and reality fractured trust more than any single scandal could. When the church is treated like a product to be marketed, the message often becomes secondary. Hillsong's collapse is not just a story about individual moral failure. It's a symptom of a system that prioritized growth and influence over holiness and humility. This pattern poses a warning for any church chasing numbers and fame at the expense of soul formation. We have seen in other places that the temptation to blend faith and marketing can lead to spiritual disaster. Hillsong's rise and fall highlight how easy it is to confuse popularity with righteousness. When ministries measure success by crowd size or celebrity attendance, they risk losing the very essence they were meant to protect. Crucial questions about leadership, culture, and priorities linger long after the headlines fade. Today, the name Hillsong carries weight far beyond the movement itself. It's a mirror reflecting broader challenges facing many churches worldwide. Yet the full story is still unfolding, and the depths of what happened go far beyond what meets the eye. The transformation of Hillsong into a global brand began in an unlikely place: the birth of a global brand. Hillsong started in 1983 as the Hills Christian Life Centre, a modest congregation in Sydney's suburbs led by Brian Houston.
This time it's Brian Houston, founder of Hillsong Church in Sydney. He started this church in 1983 and turned it into almost a brand. In fact,
his early vision was simple: build a church that passionately pursued God and served its community. Yet, from the beginning, Brian demonstrated a unique ability to read culture and understand the power of leadership as more than just preaching. Alongside his wife, Bobby, who brought charisma and energy to women's ministry, they created a team that would challenge traditional church models. The real revolution began in music. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Hillsong's worship leaders crafted songs that were unlike anything else in contemporary Christianity. These songs were both simple and deeply expressive, with melodies that felt cinematic and emotional but remained easy for congregations to sing. Unlike heavy theological hymns or purely spiritual gospel music, Hillsong songs crossed denominational lines and language barriers. Their music soon became a global language of worship. By the early 2000s, Hillsong was no longer just a church in Australia. It had transformed into a worldwide phenomenon. Worship albums frequently topped Christian music charts, and conferences drew thousands eager to experience the Hillsong atmosphere. This success set the foundation for international campuses to open in cities like London, New York, Los Angeles, and Cape Town. Each location adopted the signature style: large screens, high-quality production, and a message centered on hope and spiritual experience. The process of expansion brought about both professional standards and refined presentation skills. The team practiced their services in detail, while their music performances achieved concert standard quality, and they designed their messages to connect with specific cultural elements. The movement attracted young people because its youthful style allowed them to experience new ways of being relevant while maintaining their faith. The approach succeeded in attracting visitors from different parts of the world, yet it resulted in increasing control by a central authority. Brian Houston began his career as a pastor with modest beginnings, but he eventually transformed into the public representative of an expanding international organization. Hillsong transformed from being a neighborhood church into a worldwide organization that used media techniques and branding methods to establish leadership models that promoted both personality development and theological education. The church operated in a space where its marketing activities turned into operational procedures when its growth potential reached a critical point. The church expanded its appeal to mainstream audiences through its use of famous people and social media stars who attended its worship services. The presence of famous guests such as Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez at Hillsong services created media coverage, which established the church as a popular destination for people involved in the entertainment industry. The church established multiple connections with these individuals, which created a situation where entertainment and worship activities became indistinguishable. The rapid expansion created future difficulties for the organization. The organization pursued a high level of performance, which resulted in the loss of two essential organizational values. The church started functioning as a commercial entity when its leaders achieved celebrity status. The face of Hillsong's cultural influence in America was a man who redefined what a pastor could look like: celebrity, culture, and charisma. When Hillsong launched its New York City campus in 2010, it wasn't just planting a church, it was launching a cultural phenomenon. Carl Lentz was their star pastor. Sharp-dressed, heavily tattooed, and strikingly charismatic, he looked nothing like the typical pastor many expected. This was deliberate. Hillsong wanted a leader who could bridge the worlds of faith, fashion, and fame. Lentz preached in clubs, connected with celebrities, and embodied a new image of pastoral leadership that was relatable, cool, and accessible. Carl Lentz's influence stretched far beyond the pulpit. His friendship with Justin Bieber was one of the most visible examples of Hillsong's cultural reach. Social media and tabloid coverage made Lentz a household name for a new generation of Christians and seekers alike. Suddenly, Hillsong was more than relevant. It was trendy. The church felt like a home for the rich, the famous, and the young looking for an authentic connection. But behind the spotlight, the culture Lentz represented came with risks. His fall in 2020, triggered by moral failures, was shocking not only for the sins involved, but for what it symbolized. Carl Lentz was not a rogue pastor, but a product of a system that prized image over substance. His mistakes exposed how the celebrity pastor culture allowed accountability to slip through the cracks. This culture normalized the blending of spiritual authenticity with performance and branding. Authentic confession gave way to reputation management. Sin was hidden, reputation protected, and the desire to maintain influence often outweighed repentance. The church's leadership and congregation were left grappling with the fallout of elevated personalities collapsing in public. More difficult questions emerged about how such a culture could thrive unchecked. How much did those above Lentz know? What system allowed a celebrity leader free rein behind the scenes? These issues hinted at bigger structural problems in Hillsong's organization, not just bad decisions by one person, but a flawed system encouraging those mistakes. Lentz's story became a symbol of a dangerous culture where pastors were made into idols and churches into brands. The worship stage looked miraculous, but behind it was power concentrated in a few hands, making accountability difficult. The balance between influence and transparency tilted heavily in favor of influence. This use of culture and charisma was not unique to America. It was a global problem within Hillsong, but the intensity of the spotlight on the New York campus magnified the issues. Lentz's fall opened a door that could no longer be shut, leading many to question the very leadership model at Hillsong's core. The cracks in leadership soon deepened, shaking the movement's foundation. Leadership cracks at the top. Behind Hillsong's shining image and rapid expansion lay troubling questions about the integrity of its highest leadership. Brian Houston, the founder and longtime leader, was once seen as a visionary pastor who built a global movement from humble beginnings. But in 2021, that image began to unravel when serious allegations surfaced against him involving inappropriate behavior toward women. The revelations shocked many and shattered the trust of countless followers. One incident involved inappropriate text messages sent to a staff member, while another detailed Houston entering a woman's hotel room while intoxicated. Initially, Hillsong attempted to keep these issues quiet through internal discipline and damage control. However, as media scrutiny increased, it became clear that silence was no longer an option. In March 2022, under immense pressure, Houston officially resigned, signaling the fall of a major pillar holding up the church's empire. What made the situation more complicated was Brian Houston's family legacy. His father, Frank Houston, had a disturbing past as a Pentecostal preacher in Australia. In the early 2000s, it was revealed that Frank had explicitly abused young boys decades earlier while in ministry. Rather than reporting these crimes to the authorities, Brian chose to handle the matter privately, a decision that would haunt him years later. Australian police charged Brian Houston in 2021 for failing to report his father's abuse.
In 1999, Brian Houston found out his father Frank had molested a 7-year-old boy. It's a fact the Hillsong Church founder never took to police. He now stands charged with concealing it.
The trial brought unwanted global attention and raised deeper questions about leadership accountability within Hillsong. The founder, who had been trusted to guide millions, had become a liability to the organization's credibility. This scandal pierced the heart of the movement, revealing cracks that ran far deeper than a single leader's failure. Church members began to leave the church in large numbers after the true nature of Brian and Frank Houston became known. The organization lost funding because donors stopped contributing and campuses shut down and pastors left their positions. Throughout 2022, multiple Hillsong campuses throughout the United States, which included Phoenix and Atlanta and Kansas City and Dallas, acquired permanent closure. Trust became the most common word that people used to describe the situation because Hillsong leadership had lost their ability to trust. The scandals themselves presented only half of the existing problem. The system existed, which provided a breeding ground for the scandals to develop. The powerful received protection through a silence-based culture, which stopped people from speaking out while creating a barrier to open communication. The organization established a leadership structure that granted complete authority to select individuals, thus eliminating all possibilities of supervisory measures. The organization believed that growth in numbers indicated God's approval, which created pressure to expand their activities instead of maintaining their current spiritual practices. The Church of Hillsong promoted Jesus as their message, yet established power structures that supported prominent male leaders. The first man fell because his position became dangerous, and then all subsequent men followed him until the entire movement lost its solid foundation. The whole leadership group suffered major spiritual damage, which affected all followers who dedicated their faith and time and resources to what they saw as an authentic, God-driven initiative. The collapse of leadership trust soon led many to turn their attention to the financial underpinnings of Hillsong, an area just as complex and troubling as the spiritual crises. The financial machine exposed. Behind the scenes, Hillsong was not just a ministry, it was a financial empire operating with minimal transparency. Annual revenues were estimated in the hundreds of millions globally, fueled by generous tithes, offerings, music royalties, and numerous subsidiaries. For years, few outside the organization questioned how this money was managed, especially since the visible fruit included sold-out events and chart-topping worship music. However, when the scandals broke, investigations revealed a troubling picture. In many countries, Hillsong leveraged religious exemptions to avoid audits or financial disclosures, operating with little external oversight. Leaked whistleblower reports brought to light excessive perks for leaders, including lavish private travel, luxury retreats, and use of church credit cards for personal expenses like expensive watches and vacations. This was far from biblical stewardship. Music was a significant revenue stream. Hillsong Worship, Hillsong United, and Young and Free were not just worship teams, but multi-million-dollar brands generating tens of millions annually in royalties from churches worldwide, singing their songs.
However, moving into the 2000s, the church became involved in some financial controversies, where the media, politicians, and ex-members came out with allegations against Hillsong avoiding their taxes.
Yet, much of the music rights were held by private publishing arms connected to Hillsong leaders, meaning profits often flowed to individuals rather than the church itself. This arrangement raised questions about the alignment between ministry and personal gain. Internal communications and leaked memos painted a corporate picture more than a spiritual one. Fundraising strategies included quotas and bonus structures resembling those found in business boardrooms. Former pastors spoke openly about pressure to meet these giving goals, which at times led to stories of members sacrificing beyond their means, donating wedding savings or tithing under financial strain. The ethos had shifted from grace to performance, with the brand needing to be sustained at all costs. One former leader remarked that it stopped being about Jesus a long time ago, instead becoming about protecting the Hillsong brand. The prioritization of reputation over repentance reflected a system focused on maintaining its image and income rather than fostering genuine spiritual growth. For many local members, this dissonance between teaching and practice was heartbreaking. Financial scandal alone was not the final blow, but it deepened the sense of betrayal felt by many. Questions arose. How could a church preaching generosity pressure people into giving sacrificially while leaders enjoyed luxury? Was this the stewardship Jesus taught, or something else disguised as kingdom investment? These contradictions widened the gap between Hillsong's message and its practice. As donors pulled back and former members went public with their disillusionment, the financial foundations of Hillsong began to crumble alongside its spiritual leadership. The brand empire, once supported by vast resources, was now struggling under the weight of exposed mismanagement and ethical failures. The struggles of financial and leadership collapse soon led to a more profound spiritual crisis felt by thousands who called Hillsong home. Aftermath and spiritual reckoning. When the lights dimmed and the stages emptied, thousands of former Hillsong members faced more than just the loss of a church. They lost a spiritual home and a sense of identity. For many, faith had been deeply intertwined with the Hillsong culture, music, and community. The sudden unraveling left feelings of confusion, heartbreak, and betrayal. Some struggled not only with losing the church, but with wrestling over their relationship with God itself, questioning if their faith had been misplaced. Worship, once a moving experience powered by songs like Oceans and What a Beautiful Name, had become a form of entertainment. Teaching shifted from discipleship to branding, and community gave way to networking. Many who had devoted years felt as if they had built on sand, realizing too late that they had been following a culture and performance rather than Christ. This spiritual disorientation led some to drift away from organized religion entirely. The crisis exposed a deeper generation-wide struggle, a hunger for authentic connection met too often by hype and spectacle. Young adults became especially disillusioned, with many leaving churches altogether or entering online spaces focused on faith deconstruction. Some kept their belief in God, but lost trust in institutions. Hillsong became both a symbol and a warning. When the church resembles Hollywood more than Acts 2, real faith can suffer. Pain resulted from betrayal because which these people made sacrificial contributions they believed would advance God's kingdom. The brand they built with their efforts proved to be their most important asset. The community showed through its experiences about single mothers who struggled financially that most people donated their wedding savings to support a vision that only benefited a select group of people. The community experienced deep emotional damage because the trust between its members had been broken. The healing process brings about stories that transform dark times into moments of new life. Some people seek refuge at small churches that emphasize creating real relationships and authentic spiritual experiences instead of trying to achieve more. People choose to rebuild their religious beliefs through pure devotion, which enables them to find Jesus. The Hillsong Church experienced a necessary church vacation because its members needed to experience emotional recovery. The church system needs this moment to start its process of self-review. We measure faithfulness through social media follower counts. The church attracts us more through worship feelings than through its actual gospel message. The Hillsong Church story requires us to decide between two approaches which satisfy spiritual needs through either holy behavior or excessive excitement. The difference determines if people are truly nourished or left starving. The story of Hillsong is a caution and a call, reminding us that no matter how dazzling the stage, the heart of the church must be Christ alone. If you found this insight meaningful, please like and subscribe for more honest conversations. Together, we seek truth beyond the spotlight.